So, welcome to Cyberpunk, how female and other non-patriarchal design and thinking can redefine the metaverse. I'm your host, Futurist Amelia Kallman. First of all, thank you all so much for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedules and day. Really hope that you enjoy this as much as Freyja and I have enjoyed putting it together. So to begin, a little bit about myself and how we came to host this event this evening. So as a futurist, it's my job to know about the latest new and coming technologies and their potential impact on the future of business and our lives. My personal mission as a futurist is to help people make the most informed and responsible decisions today that are going to have the best possible outcomes tomorrow. And also, I try to make the complex accessible, providing people with the language and the context that we need to make sure that we have these necessary conversations about the future and that they are inclusive of everyone. And one of the areas that I specialize in is not just the opportunities of these technologies, but equally the risk. And these range from mental and physical to societal, data, human rights, and environmental risks. So recently I did a TED Talk asking the question, is the metaverse bad for the environment? And if it is, why isn't anyone talking about it? It was following the posting of this talk that our speaker today reached out to me, as she too shares the sentiment that we are at a pivotal place in our relationship to technology, and that now is the time that we cannot be afraid to speak up and ask difficult and uncomfortable questions. If we want a better future, then we cannot afford to be passive about the creation of it. So now I just want to take a couple minutes to define the metaverse for the purpose of this discussion. And I know people in the industry right now are giggling to themselves because we spend half our lives trying to define the metaverse. So I'm going to do my best job now, and I'll keep it brief, I promise. So the metaverse is another communication channel. It's our most immersive one yet, and it's projected to generate up to $5 trillion by 2030. There are two common ways that we talk about it today. In general, it's considered the future iteration of the internet. Our current 2D internet will become more 3D, immersive, persistent, and social, with the metaverse offering us virtual presence in virtual spaces. No one person, company, or government will own it, and it will feature interoperability, allowing us to move from one world into another as smoothly as we click between websites today. In this go-to definition, there is only one metaverse, just like there is only one internet. And by this definition, the metaverse doesn't currently exist, and it won't exist for a long time. However, we can't ignore a second, more casual usage of the term that has entered the common vernacular. For ease of communication, the word metaverse is often used to refer to the 3D immersive, persistent, and social virtual gaming worlds that already exist today. Fortnite, Roblox, Decentraland, InView, the Sandbox are all several examples, and there are hundreds more in the works. While each of these virtual worlds, or metaverses, if you will, notably have their own ecosystems that empower people to create and earn within these platforms, they currently lack the interoperability that the former definition demands. By this definition, there are currently 400 million active monthly users in the metaverse. So this discrepancy over syntax is important for us to be aware of, but rather than get distracted by it or argue over which one is more accurate, for the purposes of discussion, let's allow that it is possible for both to be true simultaneously. If anything, it only underlines the nascent stage of development we are currently in, and it's likely that the concept and definition will continue to evolve. And I just want to add that one common misperception about the metaverse is that this is something that we need to have a virtual reality headset for, or an augmented reality headset for. But actually today, most people interact with these 3D worlds through their laptop or through a mobile phone. So moving on, a couple of things really jumped out at me from my conversations with Freyja, and they really opened my eyes to things I hadn't thought about before, prompting me to say we should have a forum about this stuff. And one of those was that I had simply accepted that cyberpunk, sci-fi, dystopian-esque imagery was part of the metaverse vision without ever questioning it. And that maybe I just accepted it as a given because we haven't actually been presented with any alternatives until now. And then secondly, while intellectually I understand that the metaverse offers huge potential and opportunity, and it's going to happen whether we want it to or not, emotionally, on a personal level, I still feel a bit of a disconnect. And digging into that a bit with Freyja, I'm able to recognize that it's partly because I don't feel like me and my values are represented yet in these spaces. And if I'm over here feeling this way, there must be a lot of other people who feel the same way too. As I'm sure you can appreciate, I don't give my time away lightly. And if I'm going to spend my time in a virtual environment, I'm going to need that space to feel safe, welcoming, comfortable, and dare I say, even joyous and uplifting, and like something that ultimately enhances my life. I totally get that what we're doing here tonight would be different and perhaps even more impactful if we were doing it in the same virtual environment, sat around in a circle around a campfire, holding hands, breaking out into a dance party. You know, this is all possible today, but I know that a lot of you wouldn't be here if that was the event that I had invited you to. So just that shows me that we have a long ways to go. And maybe rather than continuously focusing on the technology side of things, maybe this human experience and design is where our attention is actually currently needed the most. For the metaverse to succeed, it needs us, it needs people, it needs leaders. Just by showing up here today, no matter what industry you're in or whether you're in school or retired, you are a leader in your community. Our goal is that you will walk away from here having thought about something in a way that maybe you hadn't before, and that maybe you feel empowered and inspired to continue this line of questioning and discussion within your own communities. To me, just talking about and debating these ideas and issues and alternative vision is the first step in the right direction. And if this is your primary industry, how can we create in a way that is representative and inclusive of everyone? And build it in a way that attracts more women and non-patriarchal groups into this space where they are very much needed. Can we produce something that not only do we want to participate in, but also enhances minds, bodies, spirits, promotes healing and equality, doesn't harm our natural environment, and is actually something that gives people hope? So to examine this line of thinking further, it is my pleasure to introduce you to the award-winning designer, Freyja Sewell. Over to you, Freyja.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you so much for organizing this. It was your original phrase, we cannot sacrifice our physical world in the production of a digital one, that really got me to reach out to you, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Before we begin, I'd like to invite us to take some breaths, 3 deep breaths together. So it's totally optional, but if you'd like to take part, I recommend you put anything in your hands down. Place your feet firmly on the floor, and we'll take 3 breaths together, starting on 1, in and out, and in. Fill the lungs and out. Push all the air out, and final breath in and out. Thank you. So please open your eyes if you've closed them. Greetings. My name is Freyja Sewell. What I want to share with you today is my excitement for this opportunity of creating this new world, this digital world that interacts with our own, that Amelia has just so beautifully sort of summed up for us, known as the Metaverse. And I really believe that rather than create, co-create should be the key word. And I'll take us through a discussion today in 3 parts. So first, we'll have a look at the current vision behind the word metaverse. Then in the center, we'll hopefully enjoy kind of imagining a different kind of future vision. And then finally, we'll have a think about how we could leverage that new vision in the creation of the metaverse, or as I prefer to call it, a bioverse. So let's get going at looking behind the word metaverse and the future visions. So my connection to future visions is that I am a multidiscipline designer. I've been working for over a decade, developing and applying my style to a world of design, from UI to VR to art performance and costume and furniture and product. I am a huge sci-fi fan. For the record, Star Trek forever. If anyone wants to talk about Star Trek, please get in touch, because I can't ever find someone who wants to talk about it as much as I do. I'm such a nerd that I went to The Force Awakens opening weekend dressed as Darth Vader. This isn't a picture of me, but I did look really good. And I had also had Princess Leia buns for like 5 years. I'm kind of doing a Trinity now. As well as film and TV, I love sci-fi literature. And I've been so inspired as a designer and a creative by the multiple diverse visions that I can find here. Now, I'd like to ask us all a question. What does the future look like? What images come to mind? Now, I won't be able to guess everything, but I'm betting that I can predict a few themes that are in our current minds. So perhaps you're seeing vast, sprawling metropolises of skyscrapers and flying cars. Perhaps you're imagining a world full of humanoid robots and humanoid acting AIs. And perhaps, sadly, environmental destruction just seems inevitable, and nature will become something that is only enjoyed by a lucky few, whilst most people struggle to survive on a dying planet. Now, the reason I bring up these themes is because they're all heavily explored in the same subgenre as this book, Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. And this subgenre is, of course, cyberpunk. And this book is important because it's where this word, the metaverse, comes from. So let's have a look at the vision behind the metaverse. Let's have a good old look at cyberpunk. Cyberpunk came out in the 1960s and 70s in the imaginative and provocative writings of authors like Philip K. Dick, Michael Moorcock, Roger Zelensky, John Brunner, James G. Ballard. And as you might be able to guess, this is not a diverse group of people. It was a group of white, mainly Western males. So to dive into their vision, cyberpunk is a completely dystopic future where we hover on the edge of or have fallen into complete environmental destruction. Cyberpunk narratives are consistently of dominance and control between the corporations in the market, the rich and the poor, and humans and their humanoid robots or slaves that they create. This is a world defined by systematic and oppressive inequality. A totally anthrocentric vision, the more than human world of nature and animals and plants have been subjugated and are a luxury enjoyed by the top few, whilst most humans struggle to survive in a highly mechanized society, cut off from other species. High-tech, low life is the most common definition. So we've created all these incredible technologies, but they don't improve the lives of most people. Now, I would argue that we are seeing this become the de facto look of the future. So these are images taken from film and TV, and 3 of them are cyberpunk, but the rest of them are just thought of as sci-fi style or futuristic. But where in this future do you see yourself? Is it a future that you would want to be a part of? Cyberpunk has become so powerful that it's actually beginning to absorb other sci-fi franchises, including Star Trek. That's right, things just got personal. Picard, the latest season of Star Trek, is dystopic, and this is the antithesis of Gene Roddenberry's, the creator of Star Trek's, original intention. So I think we should be asking ourselves, is this dark, dystopic vision created by a single demographic of person the vision and the aesthetic that we want to be driving us? Because that is what sci-fi does. It inspires. The metaverse is the most recent in a long history of designers taking cues from sci-fi visions. So yes, it's another Star Trek reference. The flip phone was originally credited to Star Trek technologies. Sci-fi acts as a compass point for us to move towards. Now, personally, I am very interested in the science and philosophy of biocentrism, which suggests that consciousness creates reality at the quantum level. But without needing to go into that kind of territory, we've seen recently that manifesting has gone mainstream. Affirmations, visioning, actualization. I wonder if anyone here uses any of these techniques. I do. And I think many of us are kind of understanding that what we think and say today is what we do tomorrow. So when we consistently present each other with this one vision stuck in a sort of postmodern cut and paste infinite loop, a question occurs to me. If everyone believes the future is dystopic, could that cause us to make it dystopic? Is this conviction in so many of our brains generating a reality that we don't want and we had no say in defining? Has it become a self-fulfilling prophecy? I would say there are indications that this is definitely what is happening. So actually, 2 of these images are not fiction, they are fact. So this image up here is from a Metaverse company ad, and this one down here is a current advert from Lego talking about the future of toys aimed at children. So I feel there is a very real need to move beyond cyberpunk before it totally absorbs our reality. Okay, so we don't want to create cyberpunk. What's the alternative? It's easy to tear something down, but what could we put in its place? Could we create a new sci-fi subgenre? Well, funnily enough, I've been working on that, and it's something that I call BioSciFi. But I want to take a moment to stress that I don't see BioSciFi as the future. Rather, I would love to imagine it's one of many, maybe infinite possibilities of places that we could go. And I would really rather see it amongst many other diverse visions for our future. But if you'll allow me to introduce this one. So, BioSciFi is a subgenre built on 3 principles: bio, nature; sci, science or technology; and fi, fiction or narrative. And that's where the human sort of plugs in for me. So sci-fi is always a discussion about the relationship between technology and human. BioSci-fi brings in nature as a 3rd core character in our future. So the bio here means nature in all its vast complexity, and it also references a very specific concept, which is biophilic design. Design that utilizes the innate affinity with the natural world that all humans have. So what this means is design that applies the wealth of research that we have from the last few decades into how and why our brains and bodies positively respond to natural stimuli. And I kind of combine this with my own personal connection to nature. So I was born in Cornwall. It's a place of great natural beauty. And accessing nature has always been a critical part of my mental health care, my creativity, and my joy. Good biophilic design is not destructive to the nature that it understands is essential to human flourishing. True biophilic design moves beyond just biomimicry in just looking like nature at a skin deep level, and instead works to protect and is inspired by the natural systems all around us. This is design that understands that we all spent 99.9% of our 300,000 years of evolution in nature. And even when we have been socialized away, even when the connection feels lost, no matter your age, race, or gender, if you identify as human, these responses are encoded into your DNA. So, BioSciFi applies this research and imagines a bright, optimistic future where we have found near perfect balance between humans, nature, and technology. BioSciFi loves to explore beyond just a certain kind of masculinity, to instead explore other energies, the feminine, the androgynous, non-binary, and the vulvic. So sci-fi has been full of phallic design for a really long time, from rocket ships to laser guns, and then I don't know if you've seen this one, but you know when the laser gun is so big that it's a spaceship and it destroys the whole planet, and then the laser gun spaceship is so big that it's a planet and it destroys the whole universe, and it's just like, oh, okay, we get it. You like big guns, but what if we imagined a future with and for other genders? And this is not about placing the feminine above the masculine, but rather about bringing balance to a visual world that has been heavily masculine for a long time. And everyone, including men, being able to enjoy a wider perspective of priorities and perspectives. BioSciFi loves to explore cutting-edge technologies like wetware computing, DNA-encoded printing, mycelium materials. What would a future that was grown rather than extracted and constructed look like? BioSciFi invites us to move beyond the lonely anthrocentric cyberpunk vision, beyond just us and our human robots, to instead imagine a future with the numerous creatures on which we all depend, from the microbial to the plants to the animals. BioSciFi loves to combine the ancient with the new. So what if we considered animal husbandry into the future to essentially co-evolve with our pets and the more than human world around us? And finally, BioSciFi invites us to reconsider our relationship with each other. If cyberpunk is a story of dominance and control, BioSciFi is a story of interconnectivity and collaboration. So that's BioSciFi for now. It's a concept I'm always updating and working on. I kind of have like a meta narrative I'm working on. But for now, I hope that's given you just like a little flavor of the kind of future that I've been dreaming of. So to finish our chat, how could we use this vision in the creation of a metaverse or a bioverse? Could we move past this concept of the metaverse with all its connotations and instead imagine something new? So keeping the verse out of respect for the origins, how about a bioverse? The bioverse is built on the same principles I've already introduced of nature, technology, and human. And this essentially results in a tech company that has nature as a key stakeholder, not retroactively, but from day one. A company that will discuss the impact of the technology it uses and make immediate choices to lessen that impact, looking towards a future where technology no longer gets a kind of free pass to be destructive, as long as it's faster, as long as it's cheaper, but instead becomes a mechanism to protect the nature on which it and we all rely. So we created a test level that explores kind of one possible iteration of this idea. So let's go there now. The Bioverse is a Web3 metaverse social impact network built for those who love to fight and play for nature and those who want to join them. A world with room for both grief and optimism. The Bioverse is not modeled on Western architectural concepts or any specific human concept, but instead is modeled on biophilic design principles. The Bioverse asks, what could a world with inclusivity, diversity, accountability, and love for our planet as foundational principles look like? The Bioverse actively tries to do good and will protect and promote scientific and spiritual truths as transparently set out in the terms and conditions, and always, always, always under evolution and change with its users. The Bioverse is not built to create a false world for us to escape to, but rather a new complementary space which augments and improves where we all live, spaceship Earth. We built this test level for Danu, who is the human technology plant hybrid host of the Bioverse. They're the Bioverse embodied. But who will they be interacting with in there? Who is this for? What humans will give life to the Bioverse? So the connecting factor between the users, or stewards as they're known in the Bioverse, is simply a love for nature. And this results in a broad, international and diverse group of humans. So let's meet some of them. So firstly, you have charities, activists, protesters, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, Extinction Rebellion, who are already using Web2 and social media to organize themselves. Next, you have, I haven't been able to think of a better name than post-capitalistic groups, people who are wanting to take control of things like food and healthcare back into their own hands. So gardeners, mushroom foragers, indigenous peoples. And within this group, there's kind of an interesting subculture of libertarian, sometimes Republican, humans who are reawakening a love for nature through smallhold farming and self-sufficiency. And I pick them out as an example of how a love for nature can bridge divides and help heal some of the polarization that Web2 has inadvertently caused and that we know is very dangerous. Next, you have the ever-growing and set to continue growing green economy. So companies who are producing things in alignment with nature. So you've got plastic-free beauty, delivery refill groceries, solar panels, eco-banking. We see here an emerging economic network of humans who want to consume, as is completely natural, but want that consumption to be in alignment with the reality of the climate crisis, and all of the clients and all of the people who would want to find these people. And finally, critically, you have Gen Alpha. So a recent study found that 67% of 6 to 9-year-olds list saving the planet as their future mission, joining the fight with Gen Z that's already underway. They are digital natives to the virtual worlds that already are around us. They are demanding and deserving of a better future than the one we're currently constructing. So I could go into more design detail for kind of ideas that I have right now of a modular system of profile flowers, activity leaves, and archival routes with open source tools and data sets for co-creating the Bioverse. We could talk about avatar design using gender neutral natural elements like water or stone. But until we have done the co-design, until we have created a team that is more reflective of our reality, I want to hold off from redefining too tightly what the bioverse is and how it functions, because we need to find that out with everyone. And another question I like to ask myself is, do we think that these protesters, dreamers, and creatives, do we think that these people are loyal to their platforms? That they wouldn't leave if offered a viable alternative more in alignment with their passions? Would we? Distrust in the systems around us is rising and rising due to many factors, including increasing inequality and some of the unexpected effects of Web 2. And I want to ask another question here, not because I know the answer, because I really don't, but because I know it's an important one to ask, which is, how can we together create something which is disruptive and absolutely questioning business as usual, whilst at the same time, certainly initially, working with the companies whose practices we are questioning? Because they currently hold most of the AIs and the technology and the data that we would need to create these new worlds. But I never forget that it's our data that drives them. And without us, they are nothing. Now, of course, there are exceptions. There are people who are already leveraging these new technologies to create better worlds. And it's brilliant to see. I've kind of keep my eyes open for them. However, despite public talk of unity and diversity, too often when you sort of drill down to the team pages, you're often confronted with another group of just Georges, Jacks, and Charlies. And it's not that there's anything wrong with these groups, sort of reminds me of that first set of names that created Cyberpunk. There's nothing wrong with Georges, Jacks, Charlies, Toms, and Riches. They're passionate, talented individuals. It's only that I don't think that any one demographic should be expected to be able, or indeed should have to bear the responsibility of creating a world that is inclusive and welcoming to everyone. And that is what this could be, a world remodeled to avoid the pitfalls of Web 2. And who knows, maybe even of our own reality. And as the climate crisis worsens, the need for a communications network that connects humans without adding to the damage will become more and more viable. So that's it really. I'm a designer, I'm a 3D modeler, I'm a biophilic design consultant, and I want to be having conversations about how we can co-create our own visions and use these visions to co-create new worlds. And I don't want to overuse this expression or lose sight of what is really at stake here. Millions of users are already enmeshed in proto-metaverses and gaming. And we're beginning to see the emergence of new types of human expression, new forms of interaction. Now is the time, before it is billions of people in there, before the tech catches up with the vision, to think about the roots we are putting down. Not only do I not believe we should be trying to create cyberpunk, I don't think we should be trying to create our world as it is through just digital twinning. We have our world in all its messy complexity. This is an opportunity to create something beyond anything we've imagined in the past, something that we don't even know about yet. And I personally don't think it's too much to say that this could be a new realm to explore and further the evolution of human society and our relation with the natural world. Now is the time to fight and play in the co-creation of these worlds. Is anyone with me? Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be able to share these concepts with you. And thank you, Amelia, for the wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to hear from you, kind of anything and everything. Bring it on.
Thank you so much for sharing your vision with us and sharing these ideas. Really appreciate it. So we are open for questions. If anybody would like to kick that off, welcome to ask Freyja a question or myself a question. You can just unmute yourself.
Well, can I just start saying, Freyja, massively thought-provoking, fabulous. So much that I see, films Elysium, Blade Runner, that dystopian future that we're all, Call of Duty being the biggest game in the world, killing people for money. You know, there's so much that we could talk about all night, forever, for days, about what you've just touched on even. Fabulous, honestly.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's crazy. You think it should be games, other kind of gaming systems would be great to see.
To echo that, I absolutely loved that presentation. Very thought-provoking. And as someone who was also very much inspired into pursuing tech because of my love of certain science fiction, I really appreciated that, which leads me to, I guess, I don't know if it's a question or a thought that was occurring to me as I was listening. As someone who's also chronically online and also hangs out in environmental spaces and in also some of these sort of more cyberpunk and kind of, it occurs to me that issue of narrative and how to make that narrative mainstream so it's appealing to people is one of the core elements of it. You know, I have to imagine that part of the appeal of cyberpunk from just a storyteller's standpoint is it's dark. It gives you a lot of material to draw on when you're telling stories. You know, it gives you conflicts for your protagonists to fight, whereas a more utopian approach is harder. But at the same time, you know, as someone who loves, I watch a lot of like YouTubers and TikTokers who live in sort of the environmental world and the homesteading world, and there's a very real disconnect. Very few of them do more of an industrial ecology approach or more of a you know, I'm zoning on the term for environmentalism that's linked with technology, but it seems like it's a very separated world. And it strikes me that one of the first issues in dealing with this would be finding a way to bridge that narrative gap so it becomes something people are open to.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point about there's clear, like, you know, I actually love cyberpunk in a way. I love Ghost in the Shell, I love Akira. It's a really exciting world, even though it's so dark. And like, it's something I've struggled with in the past was I thought, how am I going to bring darkness and conflict into, because utopias are boring, you know, utopias are incredibly boring and they never work because one person's utopia is another person's dystopia. So I prefer the word optimistic, and in today's talk I kind of focused on how it was different to cyberpunk in the brighter kind of way. But what I've come to understand is that there is so much darkness in nature, and even if we lived in a situation where we were in better balance with it, that wouldn't stop there being darkness is inherent to nature, you know, death, mold, destruction, disease. There is, I think, a wealth of narrative directions that we could go if we were freed up to actually sort of put our minds there. I feel like so much creative talent is being lost because you work within the gaming industry or a little bit like kind of get into it, and people just want to just remix, and it's quicker and it kind of feeds into generative stuff, and there's lots of reasons why it's simpler to just keep doing a cyberpunk thing than make things that are new. But I feel like as soon as we get there, we'll find the darkness, we'll find the drama. Like, we just need to start putting effort into it.
I love that, and you're absolutely, I don't even know if I really had a question, just it was the thoughts that were occurring to me, but you're absolutely right on that approach towards nature. Nature is not good or evil, nature is.
There's some crazy darkness there, like, oof.
Thank you. Joel also has a question.
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, I think you should call it biopunk. Like, the shorter the better.
There is already biopunk. I'm going to jump right on that because there's already. Oh, sorry. So I'm gonna jump right on that because there's biopunk is already a thing. Solar punk is a thing. Hope punk is a thing, and all of these things are responding for me too much onto cyberpunk, and always end up basically being sort of cyberpunk with plants and with trees. I think we need to just really like scratch that, go down to the base level, and completely move beyond it. Sorry, I cut you off, Joel. Carry on.
No, that's cut away. But I think the thing that I felt was, I think the thing that's the exciting thing about the metaverse for me is that it allows us to move into entirely different realms, right? Realms that aren't limited by physical reality. Yeah. And I think it's very indicative of the limit of imagination that most of these companies have applied to it is that they've done things like, oh, it's like the real world.
Yeah.
And I think even Amelia slipped into it in her introduction of like, we could all be sitting around a campfire. It's like, we could be sitting in a 20-dimensional space, right? Like there is no physical limits to any of these things anymore.
Yeah.
And as someone who's very excited about moving beyond our physical limitations in these fleshy blobs that we call our bodies, I can't wait to say goodbye to flesh space. And I think that's the true potential of this. And then the final thing is everything is natural, right? All of these computers in front of us are natural. Everything is natural. It's like there's a famous award in London from the Royal Society of Chemistry where they have £1 million reward for anyone who can find anything that isn't chemical. And you know, everything is chemical. So, you know, chemical free is a ridiculous statement. And I think language is actually really important with these things. And I think it's funny that Neil Stephenson, the creator of the term metaverse, has already disowned meta.
He has. I was reading about that. Yeah.
Sorry, mind dump, but yeah, wonderful.
I think it's a really good point about like what we could be instead focusing on, you know, rather than just, it makes me laugh when I see in metaverse, like a stand with something that has a stand so it can stand on the floor, which doesn't exist. And it's just like, we're wasting all this time and all this processing power. There is a place for digital twins, like there are reasons for that, and it makes sense in lots of ways. But I think the exciting part that's really going to like move us forward will not be digital twinning, will be exactly as you're talking about, going into spaces that I don't know yet, none of us know yet, because this is a whole new toolbox to be playing with.
Thank you. Yes, Alyssa has a question as well.
Cool. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Freyja. Thanks, Amelia. I have a question in terms of being like a fellow designer. And I know that sometimes when I'm thinking about the future and designing for the future, I do get quite overwhelmed with the patriarchy and these negative images. And I was just wondering from a sort of personal perspective as a designer, like how you keep your optimism in these moments when you're designing against, as you said, you know, these huge, massive images that go back decades. How, as a designer, do you keep that optimism in these, in this sort of in this battle that we're, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's I sometimes teach lecture at UAL. It's something I'm sort of always working on developing with students, with young people, because the hopelessness is real, and I think is a real impediment to us moving forward and kind of getting out of this rut. I think with optimism, there's something I call the logic of optimism, or the logic of hope, that really helps me, which is that if you don't believe something is possible, then it becomes an impossibility. So it's really about sort of understanding that you might as well try. No one is saying that the future is definitely positive. No one is saying that there aren't dark things, and we have to be realistic about researching and understanding the darker side. But when we kind of give into that, then nothing will definitely progress. So it's kind of like a gamble. You might as well put your energy onto the side of people who are on the right side of history, who are changing things for the better. You know, history, if you look at anthropology, it shows us that we go through these periods, we go up and down, we make systems and we break them and we remake them. So with that knowledge, be on the team of people who are making that better world, because you can't really lose, you know. So that helps me. There's sort of lots of different techniques. That's something.
Great, thank you.
How much do you think is about gender politics versus politics? How much do you think the patriarchy versus matriarchy versus other power structures really affects the kind of things we see in the news, things we see in the media, things we see on social media as well?
I think it's going to be hard for me to answer this question without going pretty broad. I think we are at this sort of pivotal point where we have, the data reflects that diverse teams of women and of POC people, you know, different kinds of thinking creates companies that are stronger and can come up with better stuff. So we know that it's essential to try and find a way of improving it. Of course, all the obstacles in the way is that it's set up right now. It's not going to happen, that change, overnight. But we can't expect a group of people who not only understand, but who are just one kind of demographic to create a broader world. So I think putting focus on reducing inequality and increasing the access for people will help us find those solutions. And it's sort of, you know, we have to take it one step at a time to actually get anywhere, but really understanding that gender equality is not just about moral, it's not just nice to have. It really will improve productivity. You know, if you want to do the neoliberal thing, you can get the data out. You can say, this is a real way of us to move forward and increase productivity, increase growth. So I think we have to sort of actually make that change.
I would add to that I think we really need to invest in younger generations and kind of onboarding young girls, young women, people of different demographics from an early age, and really get them excited about the possibilities here. You know, if you think about like sports and athletes, they're drafted from young ages and they're kind of built to move into these careers, and they're excited about that. And I feel like there's a real need for that at the moment. I think the last percentage I heard was 17% of women. It's 17% women in tech. So that's still a huge gap to fill. And we really need diverse voices if we're going to make a future that we're all going to want to participate in.
I do think that if we had more ladies like you in charge of Facebook and Twitter, the world would be a better place. I used to have probably every social media going through business and through, which is how we first met many years ago. And now I have one, Instagram, and I fight every day to keep that Instagram open because it's owned by Facebook. When it was privately owned, I was happy to have it. To me, it's a gallery of life. I'm a nature fan. I'm a tree hugger. So which is why I moved back from London to Lancashire after 30 years to come back and look out my window now and I'm seeing trees and my flowers. But I do feel that we're now so few people own so many social media outlets, and not for the good. We're not in good hands as Miss Amelia just said, that we're not in good hands at the moment, and we need young ladies. If we look at the UK with the Lionesses, England women's football team, and now young girls everywhere are playing football and have aspirations, that's what we need in tech.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Demand has a question if you'd like to ask it.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, brilliant. I just wanted to make one point, and then after that, one question, I suppose. I noticed that there was a lot of biophilic movements happening in architecture and clothing. I've seen a lot of designers actually putting those into some of the augmented reality clothing that they've used and sold as NFTs. I think people are kind of trying to get back to that kind of movement. It almost reminds me of the Romantic movement, as a response to the Industrial Revolution, since we're in the fourth one. Now this is kind of like a response to that movement as well. I guess the question that I wanted to ask is maybe one of the reasons why cyberpunk is very popular is because a lot of times people want to focus on the transhumanist aspect of it. So how would you compare the two movements, the biophilia movement versus the transhumanist movements, where both are trying to, improve the human condition, but are taking different approaches?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I think that transhumanism can connect really, really well with biophilic design. The difference between biophilic design now and sort of earlier, as you say, shifts where it came back into focus, is that biophilic design is now connected to science and understanding of sort of what is happening in our brains and bodies. And that enables us to use, which is a word that I, really language often falls down here. I don't want to use the word use, but use nature in a different way than in the past, because we actually can understand how to practically create sort of rules and parameters that will make people feel better. And that's not something that is gendered. It's not something that applies to only some races. So, if we think of transhumanism as the ability to move beyond our current sort of parameters of human and what it means to be female, what it means to be male, then I think biophilia is a way that moves into kind of pre-human species. It's about how our brains evolved before we were even humans. And so for that reason, I think it can intersect really nicely with discussing more than our current forms and how we can make ourselves feel better using those parameters.
Yeah, thank you for that. Cheers.
Anyone else want to chime in? Any comments?
Can we do more of these?
Right?
Because we've only just touched it. We've only just like opened the jar here. You know, it's not even quite open, and like there's so much you could talk about. It's been absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we're happy to hear that for sure. Sarah, did you have a question?
I also wanted to say the same thing. I enjoyed every minute of this talk. And I'm just so happy to see someone building in this direction, because like I just moved to Austin for the reason of the nature. And I'm like, I came into my room, first thing I saw there was a tree, and I'm like, I want to live. And the impact that it has on our mental health state, and I'm building in a mental health startup land, but it's like for the young people to have that avenue to explore it in these virtual experiences as well. I think it's very important to nurture, because I think with them is like, you know, whatever we create for them that will nurture their potential, they're going to start consuming it. And I love how you frame it about the, you know, the gender fluidity in terms of like, you know, it's no longer that's the thing that I don't like about American culture, is like very one against the other, instead of leveraging the potential of all the genders and all the things that are emerging now, and the expressions that these young people have as a need to explore themselves throughout that. So I think that that's a really powerful place for them to really have that experience, and to come out of it and have a more better understandings of themselves. So I am very excited about everything that you are building, and I'm happy to support in any way I can, because I think we need more projects like this.
I'm so happy to hear that then, and I'm really happy to hear you've got a tree outside your room. I agree. That's because I'm moving back to Cornwall because I don't have any trees outside my room, and I need it. Like I need it. And that's the amazing thing about the metaverse also, is that it will allow many of us to live in nature, but then to be able to go to Morocco or the moon or inside our own imaginations from our places of nature.
And I'll just say, Sarah is working on an amazing project. If you want to share a link to it in the chat, you're welcome to, because it's something that I think we can all get behind, which is teaching children how to better use technology in a way that is healthy, which is very needed. I wanted to go to Robin. I think this is going to be our last question. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. So I, first of all, I also, like everyone else, really appreciated your whole presentation. It was beautifully thought through and really makes a lot of sense. And I really liked so much the idea that the future, that we should think about how to grow the future, or the future should be grown rather than extracted and constructed. And so I'm interested in just like who else is not just thinking this way, but actually also trying to design this way, doing this kind of work. Because as you were saying, Sarah, I mean, sign me up, you know, I really would love to go help this initiative.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be looking into Sarah. There are definitely people out there. When it comes to the biophilia, I worry, actually, it's a little bit related to the point I was talking earlier about this sort of coming back into digital space. I think when the biophilia is just skin deep, is just biomimicry, we're kind of losing what we could really be exploring, which is, you know, reevaluating our thought systems at the base of stuff. I think we are beginning to see more things emerging, and I really hope that that's something that we're going to see more and more of. And I'll definitely be looking out at Sarah's work. It's emerging. You know, I don't know if anyone has read The Great Turning, but it's this sensation, I think, of many people all over, like just like the forest kind of grows green slowly, tree by tree, you don't really notice it, and then suddenly all the trees are in bloom. I think there are loads of different things coming everywhere, and what will be amazing is when we manage to connect each other up, just like we're doing here. when all the people who think this way actually manage to find each other, that is when we're going to really make amazing stuff. And I feel like we are due another, incredible burst of creativity when more women get into tech, when more people of color get into tech, when everyone is able to have more conversations and exchange. We're going to see an explosion, and I just hope I live long enough to see it. That's the only.
Well, and that's a great point. We do have one quick question that says, is there a virtual headquarters for this? Can we all go and experience the Bioverse somewhere?
So a proto Bioverse, I will, I'll get a link after this and put it into the chat. Yes, so you can walk around a test level, which is the images that I showed you. But in, support of my own statement, until the Bioverse is created in a less damaging way, I will not say it exists. Like, until we find a way to find servers that are less damaging, to use recycled tech, I don't know yet. Need people to help, need to figure out a way. But you can experience the aesthetic of the Bioverse via a link that I will place now.
Cool. And we will follow up. We'll share this video. We'll share links. If you want to share your LinkedIn or your name in the chat so that people can connect to you in that way, please feel free to go ahead. We're really pleased that so many people came out and that everyone had really awesome things to contribute. So thank you so much. I really do believe that we are on the cusp of a technological renaissance and that we have an amazing opportunity here to create something that could right generations of wrongs and could be used as a tool of empowerment rather than subjugation. But, if we want this, we're going to have to fight for it. And I hope that you help us spread the word about these alternative futures. And let us know if you want us to do another one of these. Let's look into that. So thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone. It was such a pleasure sharing with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.